Marie Curie, the girl who loved science and changed the world. There was once a little girl in Poland, quiet, curious, and growing up in a country that had lost its freedom. She studied in secret, read science books by candlelight, and fell in love with knowledge. Her name was Maria Sklodowska. The world would come to know her as Marie Curie. She became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and the only person ever to win it in two different sciences, physics and chemistry. But behind those prizes was a story of pain, grit, and incredible passion. A childhood marked by loss, years of poverty and freezing nights as a student in Paris, and lonely hours in her lab, working with radioactive elements, so dangerous that her notebooks still emit radiation today. Marie Curie wasn't just a scientist. She was a fighter, a pioneer, a woman who believed in science, even when the world didn't believe in her. She didn't just change the rules. She rewrote the story for women, for science, and for humanity. The girl from Warsaw who dreamed of science. Marie Curie, born Maria Sklodowska, entered the world on November 7, 1867, in Warsaw, Poland. Her family was poor, but deeply rooted in education. Her father was a physics and mathematics teacher. Her mother ran a school for girls. From an early age, Maria was surrounded by books, maps, chalk dust, and the quiet belief that knowledge was power. But Poland at that time wasn't truly Poland. The country was under Russian rule. Schools weren't free to teach Polish history or culture. Girls weren't encouraged to learn much at all. And science? That was a dream reserved for men. Still, Maria was different. She read everything she could get her hands on. She studied on her own when schools were closed. She asked questions most people didn't dare to think. By the time she was a teenager, she was already known as the girl who always had her nose in a book. Tragedy struck early. Her mother died of tuberculosis when Maria was just 10. Her sister passed away not long after. And yet, Maria didn't crumble. Instead, she grew more determined. She longed to attend university, but in Warsaw, women weren't allowed to go. So she joined something radical, the Flying University, a secret, underground school for women, held in basements and apartments around the city. There, Maria studied science, philosophy, and politics, risking arrest just for learning. But she knew it wasn't enough. If she truly wanted to become a scientist, she'd have to leave her homeland. So she made a decision that would change her life and the world. She would go to Paris. At age 24, with barely any money, barely any French, and carrying more hope than luggage, Maria Sklodowska boarded a train. She left behind everything she knew, and set out to become someone the world had never seen before. She didn't know it yet, but she was on her way to becoming Marie Curie. A cold room in Paris and the birth of a legend. Paris was everything Maria dreamed of, and more brutal than she ever expected. When she arrived in 1891 to study at the Sorbonne, she was one of only a handful of women in a sea of men. The lectures were in rapid-fire French. The city was expensive, and her dorm room? It was a cramped attic, cold in winter, where she studied by candlelight and skipped meals to pay for books. But Maria, who now went by the French name Marie, was unstoppable. She threw herself into her studies: physics, mathematics, chemistry, long hours in crowded classrooms and longer nights bent over textbooks. She earned top marks, not because it came easy, but because she worked harder than anyone else. Sometimes, she fainted from hunger. She wore the same coat through snow and rain. And still, she stayed. In 1894, something extraordinary happened. Marie met a man named Pierre Curie. He was a physicist, brilliant, quiet, and deeply unconventional. He didn't care that Marie was a woman in science. He cared that she was brilliant. They bonded over ideas, over experiments, over shared notebooks filled with calculations and wonder. In 1895, they married, not in a grand ceremony, but in simple clothes and deep commitment. Instead of rings, they gave each other bicycles. Pierre and Marie began working together in a tiny lab, a former shed behind a school. It was dusty, dark, and freezing in winter, but it would soon become the place where history changed. Marie became fascinated by a discovery made a year earlier. Uranium gave off invisible rays that could pass through solid objects. She wondered, What else in nature might give off this strange new energy? So she searched, tested, crushed rocks, measured radiation, and in 1898, she discovered something extraordinary. 2 new elements, polonium and radium. No one had ever seen anything like them. They glowed faintly in the dark. They gave off heat, and they emitted powerful energy. Marie Curie had just opened the door to the atomic age. But her work was only just beginning. She didn't have fancy equipment. She didn't have money or a research team. Just grit, patience, and a partner who believed in her. Together, the Curies carried tons of pitchblende, radioactive ore, by hand. They heated it, stirred it, and distilled it down to isolate tiny traces of radium. The process was exhausting, dangerous, and often thankless. But in the glow of that discovery, Marie was becoming more than a scientist. She was becoming a force of nature. Nobel Prizes, fame, and the cost of greatness. By 1903, the scientific world could no longer ignore what Marie and Pierre Curie had achieved. Their discovery of polonium and radium had opened a whole new field of science, radioactivity. And their work wasn't just theoretical. It promised real applications, treating disease, understanding atoms, and even powering the future. That year, the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics to Pierre Curie, Marie Curie, and Henri Becquerel. But it almost didn't happen. At first, the committee only planned to name Pierre and Becquerel. They overlooked Marie, until Pierre insisted that she had done equal, if not greater, work. Thanks to him, she became the first woman ever to receive a Nobel Prize. Marie Curie was now world famous. But fame didn't mean peace. Pierre, who had always disliked attention, struggled under the weight of the spotlight. And in 1906, tragedy struck. He was hit by a horse-drawn cart and died instantly. Marie was devastated. Her partner in life and science was gone. But she didn't stop. She took over his teaching post at the Sorbonne, becoming the first woman to teach there. She continued her research on radium, even as grief threatened to consume her. And in 1911, she won a second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, for isolating pure radium. Again, she made history. But again, the cost was high. Marie Curie's health began to decline. She had no idea how dangerous radiation truly was. She worked without protection, handling radioactive materials directly. Her notebooks from that time are still so radioactive they're stored in lead boxes today. And she faced constant scrutiny. Newspapers questioned her integrity, criticized her personal life, and painted her as an outsider, especially during a scandal over her rumored relationship with a fellow scientist. But through it all, she kept going, not for glory, not for money, but for knowledge and for the hope that science could help humanity. In World War I, she outfitted ambulances with mobile X-ray units, training young women to use them to treat wounded soldiers. She traveled to the front lines. She got her hands dirty. She saved lives. Marie Curie wasn't just making discoveries. She was redefining what it meant to be a scientist. And she was doing it without ever asking for permission. Legacy, inspiration, and the woman behind the genius. Marie Curie died on July 4, 1934, from aplastic anemia, a condition likely caused by years of exposure to radiation. She was 66 years old. Her body, like her notebooks and instruments, still held traces of the energy she had discovered. But her life did not end with her death. Her work had already changed science forever. She pioneered the field of radioactivity, opened doors for women in science, and reshaped how we understand the atom, medicine, and energy itself. She left behind not just data but direction. Her daughter, Irene Joliot-Curie, followed in her footsteps. She and her husband would also win the Nobel Prize, making the Curies the most Nobel-awarded family in history. But beyond the awards and discoveries, Marie Curie left us something even more powerful, an example. She showed that brilliance isn't loud. It doesn't demand the spotlight. It grows quietly, in cold rooms, in worn notebooks, in sleepless nights. It grows with sacrifice. She proved that a woman could do science at the highest level, not by acting like a man, but by being herself. And she taught us that curiosity, courage, and resilience can change not just the life of one person, but the future of the world. Today, The name Curie lives on. In hospitals, in labs, in textbooks, in every girl who dares to dream of equations, and every scientist who refuses to give up. Marie Curie didn't just break rules. She rewrote them, and in doing so, she reminded us all, the pursuit of knowledge is not for the privileged. It's for the bold. Thank you for listening to this journey through the life of Marie Curie. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a comment below. Whose story should we tell next? Because history isn't just about what happened. It's about the people who changed what was possible.